Good morning, Ryan.
Good morning.
After the last 3 seasons that have ended in disappointing fashion, despite the pretty good record, what have you learned about these teams and about yourself as a coach?
You learn a lot. You learn a lot every year. And I think the thing for us that we've talked to our team about and we'll continue to is that every year you have to rebuild. And, we're calling them bricks. There's bricks in the foundation. And, you won't know how strong that foundation is until the storms come and the big games come down the road. And it's going to be a long season this year. So we're trying to maximize every single day, every meeting, every walkthrough, every practice, because I feel like, the right people in the right seats. And that's probably the number one thing overall. If you ask me, like, what have you learned the most? It's making sure you have the right people in the right seats. That started with the players. Then, certainly the players coming back. And then it came to adding a few guys in the transfer portal, the recruiting, the coaches, the staff, and then putting all that together to some hard work this offseason, which, I think the foundation up until this point has been excellent from, when it started at the end of the season till now. But preseason is going to be a critical part of this, and it's got to be physical. The guys got to have an edge to them. But this is what everything else is built on. And today's just the first day. But we know it's going to be, a long road to the end of the season. But that doesn't mean it changes your approach every day, the urgency that we have to have. And we got to bring it. And, and so, we're going to do everything we can to maximize our team and, play really good football down the stretch. But, I think when you look at the way that the season's designed at the end of the year, you're looking at, 4 or 5, maybe even 6 games of, probably top 10 football back to back to back. And so the only way to be ready for something like that is to train at a high level, challenge ourselves to be really good on both sides of the ball, running the ball, stopping a run, taking care of the football. And then obviously, in the passing game, you have to be balanced. But we got to be a physical team, and we got to be able to travel on the road and play physical football on the road.
Is there a different sense of urgency for you personally?
No, every year there's urgency. You don't think it's important, try losing a game at Ohio State. I say it all the time. So it's no different that way, but certainly there's a lot of guys on the team that want to, be able to finish the season with some hardware, and that matters.
Guys, we're going to keep it at one question just because we've got a lot of people that want to ask questions. 4th row left, Tony Gerben, Buckeye Huddle.
Brian, obviously a lot going on, but with the possible move to 105 scholarships, what are you doing right now to plan for that? And could we see a 2025 class of 40 guys?
That's a pretty high number, but higher than maybe we're used to. Yeah, I think so. We are planning accordingly. I don't think any decisions have been made exactly how that is all going to shake out, but I think that I do believe we need 120 guys going into camp. And how that shakes out during the season, I think it needs to be decided. But, that 120 number has been around for a long time. And, even just being out there at practice today, you saw us go to 2 fields. So every team period of, 12 to 15 minutes, we were getting 48 plays in. And that matters, getting young guys reps. And the first 4 days, that's the way we're going to do it. The only way to do that is if you have 120 guys. So I think that's important. But in terms of planning, you're seeing us, add some guys in that maybe in the past, we wouldn't have signed this early. And I think that there's different, almost tiers now. You have, certain guys, that are recruited at a certain level and some other guys. And, the best way I can kind of look at it is you kind of have the guys who, in 3 years are probably ready to go look at the NFL and make a decision. 3 guys or 3-year guys, that, some guys that can make early impacts. Other guys that are a little bit more developmental. It may take a couple of years into the program. Some of those, by the way, have been our best players at Ohio State. So everyone's a little bit different in their journey for whatever reason. We want to bring in a mix of those guys into the program, but our number will be higher, and there will be a little bit more attrition than certainly in the past. So you have to be able to make up for that.
Right next door, Pat Murphy, 24/7 Sports.
Ryan, you're talking about the end of the season. It's almost NFL-like with playoffs and whatnot. How much does it help that you have experience, Chip has experience, other guys have experience, Brian's played in the NFL, right, just to have that knowledge of what it's like to play in those playoffs and late season games to help in this first year?
Time will tell, but like you said, Tim Walton has been, in the NFL for a long time, and you mentioned some of the other guys that have been there before. Certainly Chip's been a head coach in the NFL, and I feel like there'll be a lot of input across the board as we get towards, the end of the season and what that means schematically. We've already talked about what that means, a little bit in terms of our training and during the season. But, I do think, that experience should help because it will be different in how we approach it. But ultimately, football is still football. And I've been saying that too. Like, there has been a lot of changes. And you think about the way that the season's played out. You look at the way that our teams are designed nowadays. You look at even during the game, you have coach to player communication. We have tablets on the sideline. So there's a lot of things that are going on. But the truth is, football's still football. Like, that hasn't changed. And we can't lose focus on that. And that's what being in the preseason's all about. Like, all that other stuff goes to the side, put the football down, and let's see who can play with fundamentals and toughness. And so that's why we don't want to overdo it that way. There's still, so much, of the game that's the same that it's been for 50 years. And that's what we're focused on right now. As we get into the season, we'll make sure we make the adjustments that we think are appropriate.
Dave Biddle, 24/7 Sports.
Ryan, what are your thoughts on Tegra and what he needs to do? He looks like an NFL offensive lineman out there. What does he need to prove to you guys to seize a starting spot?
Well, I think the first thing is you show that you know what you're doing. And that's the first level of learning is, do you know what you're doing? And I know that sounds simple, but like, you have to know your assignment's cold, and there's a lot of preparation that goes with that. I think he's done that. Then the second thing is, how to do it. And, the technique, the calls, there's so much that comes with, how to do your job. And then can you do it consistently over time? Tegra has shown that he can do it. He's shown that he knows what he's doing. The big question is now, after going through this preseason, he's changed his body some. He's had a good season, good off season. Mick's been, the reports have come back good from, Mick does a great job of putting them in tough situations, creating conflict amongst the team, putting them in situations where when they get tired, they have to stay focused. Because we know we're going to wear teams down this year, win games in the fourth quarter. And if that's our goal, then we have to be able to do that, especially up front with the offensive line. If he can consistently show this preseason that he can do that, he's going to find himself in games.
Front row, Dennis Dodd, CBS Sports.
Ryan, when and how did you get used to the transactional nature of what the game and your job have become? Money, NIL, agents, everything.
I do think a couple years in the NFL did help me with that, but it's not the NFL. It's different. There's still so much that comes with it, and you still recruit. You don't draft. But, there is part of the game that is changing in terms of that. And that's where I go back to, like, every season, you almost have to rebuild. You have to rebuild your team, where in the past maybe it wasn't that way. But with the way things are designed nowadays, you have to be flexible. And I think the easy thing to do is throw up your hands and say, boy, this is just, too much, and I don't want to do it anymore. But I've used the analogy before, where I've told this to certain folks, and I did my research about when they built Ohio Stadium 100 years ago, and like at the time, people were like, "You got to be kidding me!" Like over a 60,000 seat stadium, they thought college football was completely out of control. 100 years later, it's a different way. People are still saying the same type of thing. So I just think being steady in the boat and coming up with solutions. It's a great time to be a Buckeye. It's a great time to be at Ohio State. We're very well positioned. We've worked hard to be well positioned. We have to continue to be that way and be leaders in this space. We're fortunate to be at a place that can do that.
Joey Kaufman, Columbus Dispatch.
Ryan, you've been you talked about before the offseason that Carson Hinzman's had in his development. We didn't see him out there. Just what's the update on
Who was it?
Carson Hinzman?
He wasn't here today because of an illness. Usually, again, I don't. But yeah, he was. We held him. Came in, checked in, but wasn't feeling right. So trainers decided to hold him today. We expect him to be back out tomorrow.
Bill Landis, the podcast, Kings of the North.
Ryan, we talked so much about Jeremiah this offseason. Mecca's got a body of work, and then day one, there's Carnell Tate, who I think is kind of flown under the radar a little bit, making a bunch of plays. What kind of growth have you seen from Carnell, and how is he going to help this offense this year as he steps up into a larger role? Yeah,
I think, again, the limit for Carnell is through the roof. I don't think there is a limit to what he can be. He is not someone that, you typically hear, but you feel out there, and he takes a lot of pride in his route running. He's certainly gifted, but he's I think that's the first thing that I recognized when he got here, like a lot of precision in his route running. Takes pride in when he gets out there knowing exactly what he's doing. He comes in well prepared. He's tough. The guys in the team really like who he is. And he showed last year he can do it. And so, he's going to have to be a major contributor for our offense this year if we're going to, do what we want to do.
Third row middle, Dan Hope, 11 Warriors.
Ryan, just follow up on with scholarships. I think you guys have 5 extra scholarships available for this year. Have you decided what you're going to do with those scholarships for this year?
Yeah, we've kind of reallocated some of those, so we are at limit right now. I'm not going to get into how that all played out, but yeah, we ended up getting to the limit, and we allocated some of those out. Yep.
Third row right, Dylan Davis, Delaware Gazette.
Given so much newness in your offense, do you feel more pressed this year to come to a conclusion with that quarterback spot than maybe you did last year, or is it just a matter of it'll be decided when it's decided, regardless of?
I mean, it has to happen. You can't force it, but yeah, ideally, we'd like to, have someone as a starter and then go into the season and get going with that. So, how that shakes out, I'm hoping that, it happens in the first week to 10 days, but, it's the same thing that happened last year. Like I'd like for it to happen. It didn't. Even after the first couple of games, I didn't feel like it happened. And then it obviously got to the point, after we won the big game that was appropriate. But we'll see how it shakes out. And I think all the guys are doing a good job. I think we're going to need them all, like I said. But you'd like to have that done in the first couple of weeks.
Second row middle, Stephen Means, Cleveland.com.
You guys did the split field thing last year too, and you said there were some benefits, but there's probably some cons to it as well. Why go with that route again this year with the offensive line trying to figure that out, but also the quarterback battle? Yeah,
I think like you saw, Simmons and Donnie on the same field together, and then you'll see, we'll mix and match a little bit because that might have to happen during the season. But for the first 4 practices, I think it's a great way to get quarterbacks a lot of reps, get everybody out there, get moving around, and you're getting 48 reps in a shorter period of time. So it's a great way to get everybody moving around, and first 2 practices we're not in, we're not in pads anyway, so it's really hard to identify what's going on with the offensive line when you don't have pads on. I mean, you can go in the right direction, but there's very little contact. It's all hands and feet. So more importantly, we're getting reps for the quarterback, we're getting reps for everybody on the team in a shorter period of time, a little bit more efficient. Like you said, I mean, I guess the negative would be you're not always going to go against the one on the other side. But we have the rest of camp for that. We have 25 practices.
Fourth row right, Spencer Holbrook, Letterman Row.
Brian, when you look out at your running back room, does the depth, or I guess lack thereof, kind of really show itself there? And are you guys concerned already on day one that that's something you're going to have to manage? I
was going back and thinking about, when we've had really like 5 running backs in that room. I really couldn't come up with very many times we had that many anyways. We have come up with some contingency plans in place, if something were to happen. But I think, the bottom line is like James and Sam got to do a great job. Like we got to be able to put those guys in the game. And I think that's really important. And then, there's, a few other guys in that room that hopefully can, step into some roles there. Like, TC did. I mean, nobody really knew who TC was that year. And he became a guy that we felt comfortable putting in the game late in the game. But so we'll see. And we got 6 guys in that room, and we'll go from there. But if we can be 4 deep there and stay healthy, then I think we'll be great. Certainly, if you start taking injuries, then it puts more stress on the room. We expected to have 5, and it was a really freak situation with TC. Just kind of was going over a bag and ended up tearing his ACL, which was unfortunate. So and it happened so close to camp, there wasn't much we could do to replace him. So the guys understand that. Carlos will do a great job getting those guys ready. But yeah, I mean, we can't waste any time with the young guys. They got to step up and get ready to get in the game.
Front row right, Austin Ward, podcast, Not in the Eyes.
Brian, you said last week you wanted to stop talking so much about Jeremiah until he actually played a game. Do you think you can make it if he's going to make catches like that every day in practice?
I'm going to try. Yeah, I'm going to try. I don't want to, put too much out there, but, he had a great offseason. Did some things that, some freshmen haven't done before in terms of recognition and, some of the hard work he's put in. And, you talk about the humility of a young man who's as talented as he is. It's special. We're excited that he's out there every day, and we're all excited about it. But, again, I don't want to get too far out in front of this one, but it's going to be, he's got a very bright future ahead of him.
Court made his retirement public yesterday. It's probably been in the works for a while, but what were those conversations like? What has he meant to the program, and will there still be some role for him moving forward? Yeah, Court, when he first got here, he recognized very easily and very fast how disciplined he was. He was one of the first guys in the building, earned a leadership role on the team, but just, was just kind of decimated with injuries. And
was strong in his faith, and it was very hard for him to step away. But he, even though he didn't get a chance to play on the field as much, he did have a great leadership role, similar to Cam Babb and what he did here. So a lot of the guys are going to miss him. He just went recently on an internship to NFL league office in New York. I know he's trying to figure out what's the next step for him, but yeah, he'll always be welcome here, and the guys look up to him.
Fifth row, Cameron Teague Robinson, The Athletic.
Brian, when you talk about Josh Simmons, it's finally he got a full spring with you guys. Just how much growth did you see with him, and for you, how much confidence do you have that you have both him and Donnie paired back together, and kind of that experience they have with each other?
I think it's important. Josh Simmons can do some things that most can't. He's very, very skilled and talented. And so, we feel like the offseason was a difference maker for him. But, time will tell, like a lot of these guys. But I think he's positioned himself with a good summer to be the best version of himself. Again, once we get going, we'll find out. But to think about where he was a year from now, I think we're, light years away from that. And understanding scheme, schematics, day-to-day, culture, what it takes to be a Buckeye. He's got a whole year under his belt that way. So we're going to need him to play great. I mean, if we're going to reach our goals, we need him to be a huge contributor and be a big part of what we do.
Right in front of him, Dave Holmes, WSYX.
Yeah, Ryan, when you're looking at so many different position battles, I'm curious, what's the dynamic like between you and your assistants? Because 100 guys out there, more than 100, you can only be so many places. I mean, how much do you lean on them? How much are you walking around and observing? How does it work when you're trying to set depth charts?
Well, we call them champions, and we have three different areas of the champ. We have the winter, we have the summer, and then we have during the season. And you have to grade out over 80% to be a champion. You have to play over 15 plays. And the goal of every assistant coach in their unit is for their players to grade out a champion. It's the goal for their unit to be champions. And so ultimately it's their job. Like, they're hired to do that. The first thing they got to do is take care of their family, their health, and their character. The next thing they got to do is recruit. But the next thing is taking care of their unit to make sure that their guys are doing their part. And how do you do that? What makes your unit strong? First off is production. Then there's leadership, unselfishness. Well, if they're hired to do a job, like they got to do that. And then they got to pound their fist on the table and say, this is who I want. Now, ultimately, it's going to be my decision. But, those guys are hired to do a job, and I'm going to let them do it. But as long as it's well thought out. But we have a very experienced group. We have a lot of guys who understand what it means, and certainly the coordinators have a big say in that. But that's it. I mean, does your group grade out champions? Does your group strong? And if you are, then you're doing your part in terms of all the 10 groups.
Right in front of him, Rob Aller, Columbus Dispatch.
A little psychology 101. You've got some position groups that get high praise, wide receiver, DB, and you've got one or more offensive line that kind of takes some heat, gets some criticism. How do you deal with, how do you coach that differently, deal with that differently, treat them differently going in?
Yeah, we say this, and I'll remind them as we get closer to the season that praise and criticism are the same thing, and you can give it attention if you want, but it's really just someone else's opinion. Like, what you are is when you press play, like, that's who you are. And so your opinion or someone else's opinion, that's fine. That's your opinion. But when you press play, what are you putting on film? That's who you are. And so you challenge all those guys to say, like, what is your identity? Yeah, I know what I want our team identity to be, and I told the team to be the hardest playing team in the country. Like, that should be our identity, the hardest playing team. So when someone watches the Buckeyes this year, they should see that. And, but what do you want yourself to be? What do you want your unit to be? What do you want the offense and defense to be? Like, those are all challenges that we've had this summer to our staff and to our players. And it doesn't matter what's happened in the past. It doesn't matter what someone else's opinion is. Like, what do you want it to be, and is it in the end? Like, that's the challenge. So, we know where we need to get better. We know guys that have done it before and put it on the field, and so we got to find that right mix. But just because you've done it in the past, we've seen that before. We've seen guys who have great years come back and have, a clunker. Well, maybe you rested on your laurels, or you listen to people's opinions. And then you see other guys who maybe got, criticized and then comes back, have something to prove. Well, that's good. Use it as a motivator. But, I can only go on what I've seen this summer, and I've seen a great summer. But we know we got a long road ahead of us.
Third row left, Andy Andrews, 11 Warriors.
I don't think anyone's asked you about quarterbacks yet. Just what was your evaluation of how they performed today? Obviously very early in fall camp, but just how are things progressing there?
I thought our guys looked, more fit. I think they look stronger. I think they moved better from the spring. They just look like they've had, 3-4 months of work on their bodies. They just looked that way. They looked stronger. The ball came out with more pace today. I thought they had a better understanding of the offense being out there for the first day. You saw us, in and out of the huddle. You saw us, with signals. You saw us with a couple different styles. So our guys have to learn how to say it in a huddle, and that's something new. We haven't done a ton of that before, but there's something to that. And, we're excited to be able to do that again with the coach-to-player communication. The offensive line gets together. They talk before the play. The skill guys are there communicating what the down and distance is. When that quarterback walks in a huddle, he can look everybody in the eye and say the play and then give them a little something before the play. And then you break the huddle as a group, you get up to the line of scrimmage, you put your hand in the dirt, and you get after somebody. And I think, that starts with the quarterback and being able to do that. I thought they had a good handle on that today. They walked in the huddle, we all broke the huddle, and we got up to the line of scrimmage. Now, we're still going to change tempos up at times. But you have to be able to see and learn. You have to be able to listen and learn. And there's there's a couple different ways to do that when you're calling it from a huddle or when you're signaling. So we're doing that a bunch of different ways, and I thought they handled that well today, just day one. But that part was good. It had some good purpose about them.
Right next door, Jeff Garofalo, Press Pros.
Coach, you mentioned the hardest working team. You talked about being tough in the past, and you mentioned it today. What are your list of characteristics of a guy, or the boxes a guy has to check to say he's tough, he's going to be the hardest working guy?
Well, it kind of goes like, we've been saying it where, everyone talks about talent, but talent's God-given. Nobody earned their talent. It's discipline and skill. And when you're talking about toughness and you're talking about, first off, being tough is being physically tough, like going and lining somebody up and knocking them off the ball. Another part of being tough is being resilient. When a play doesn't go well, being able to put that behind you and move on to the next play. Being tough is being able to sustain throughout a whole game and wearing someone down and beating them up in the fourth quarter. Like, those are all signs of toughness. But there's so much more that comes with that part of it. When you talk about effort, you talk about attitude, you talk about focus. All the things that take no talent are the things that we're really focusing on. And then you have the skill part of it, the skill of, being the best D lineman in America. What comes with that? Well, you got to have great hand combat. You got to be able to get off of blocks. You got to be able to have great pad level. Those are all the things you learn playing your position. So those areas that we're focusing on are the discipline, which is the no talent issues, and the skills to do your job. And we really spend some time as a staff making sure that we're saying the right things, the same things that we're teaching in special teams, the same things that the coaches are going to be coaching in their meetings. And if we can do that, then, we can maximize our talent.
Front row left, Jake Trotter, ESPN.
Yeah, Ryan, especially with the guys that decided to come back, how are you feeling about the leadership in the locker room? And then you were asked about urgency earlier. Off that, what sense of urgency are you getting from them going into this season?
Yeah, a lot of urgency, a lot of leadership. But you know what? I'm sure most coaches in America would tell you that right now. It's day one. We'll find out when the real bullets start flying. But I can, again, only going off what I've seen. And I've seen guys holding guys accountable all summer. If someone wasn't behind a line or they didn't go +2, calling them out, bringing it back. There's a reason why guys came back this year. And you heard a couple guys on our team talk about the expectations. We're not going to talk about that anymore. But there's a reason they came back. And it wasn't not to reach our goals. That's just the truth. So, I think it's there, but we'll find out. We'll find out what this foundation looks like as we get into the season and get the, some of those storms that are coming our way. They're coming, and we got to be ready to go. So, the beginning of the season, everybody's excited. Everybody thinks they have a great summer. Everybody thinks they have great leadership. But the truth is, you won't know until you get down the road. That being said, I feel like we're building that foundation strong right now, but we're going to push, and we know that we can't waste any moment.
Ryan, we saw a lot of Jermaine Matthews last year, but on the outside corner, saw him a lot today in the nickel. What do you guys like about him, that inside spot?
Well, he has quickness, he has twitch, and he's competitive. And that's a guy who, again, has a lot of talent. He's got to continue to build discipline in his life. It's very important, and he can be a contributor. You've seen the talent there, and he's got to have a good preseason for us. But the talent is definitely there.
Deep right field, Jeremy Birmingham, the podcast, Dot in the Eyes.
Ryan, 2 years ago, you guys opened the season with Notre Dame. You skipped having a late July recruiting event. Last year, you did not have a marquee game at the start of the year, so you had one. What went into not having that sort of event this year, and how much discussion is there about that moving forward as being a consistent thing?
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit, but we went 4 weekends in June, and our staff, and they didn't have a day off in the month of June. And I just felt like it was the right thing to do. I feel like, where we are in recruiting right now is strong. But the wives who are there every weekend and during the week. We had in-week visits. I mean, we really busted our tail in June, and I think right now it's showing. Where we're at right now, but I just felt like we took 4 weekends away from everybody in June, and I felt like it was a good opportunity to get away a little bit and get a 3-day weekend. We did that, came back refreshed, and we'll reassess it every year.
Front row, Bill Rabinowitz, Columbus Dispatch.
You mentioned that all the quarterbacks looked more fit. Will Howard in particular. Did you ask him to change his body or anything, or really to ask him to do anything? Because he, I mean, unlike Devin and even Lincoln, didn't go through last year. Right. So, were there certain messages that you said to him?
Oh yeah, that started right when he first got here. We got Kayla Olson involved and Mick and everybody we could. We had the opportunity to use DEXA scans here to get an idea of their body fat and their their makeup and their lean mass, and he got challenged. And it's one thing to put on weight, take off weight, but when you're talking about body fat and lean mass and those type of things, you'll just see him. He looks different. He's moving different. He worked hard on that, changed his diet, changed his workout plan, and dedicated himself to the off season. And I think you're seeing that right now. Now he's got to sustain that throughout the season. But I forget exactly what he weighed in at today, but he's moving well for his size.
Like the numbers in terms of how much he lost or body weight?
I don't. I'll get it for you the next time. I'll have it because I know Kayla has all those types of things. But he certainly lost some weight, but then put on some good weight, and it's showing.
Front row right, Tim May, the Tim May podcast.
Yeah, there you go. Some of the stuff. Tigger Chabola, getting back to him, there's a guy that could have left and found that, as I say, water down the hill finds the easiest path. He could have gone that route. What does it tell you about his dedication that he does want to make his mark here? And I know that you still got to go out on the field and produce, right?
Yep.
But what does it just tell you about what's driving him?
Yeah, I mean, he wants to be here. He wants to be a contributor to Ohio State, and that does matter. Like you said, I mean, there's other places he could have gone and tried different avenues, but he stuck with it, and it's going to pay off for him. It will if he just continues to get better and continue to show discipline and consistency. But we were excited about what he did this offseason. He pushed through that. He's going to have every opportunity to go become a major contributor on offense.
And one quick about Will Howard. Do you see him being even more accurate than maybe he showed up here from the aspect of throwing the football and stuff? What have you just when you watched him today? What just kind of in that regard jumped out at you?
Yeah, I did notice that today. I thought there was more zip on the ball, and I thought there was more accuracy today for day one. That I did notice that again, day one. What are you going to do with day one? But I thought the ball came out with more pace. I thought he had more discernment, and I thought there was some accurate throws out there.
And we'll wrap things up. Second row right, Doug Namarise, Kings of the North.
Ryan, when you were talking about Tegra earlier, you said we know we're going to wear teams down and win games in the fourth quarter. What is required to be able to do that, and how have you thought about your ability to do that in the last several seasons?
Well, the first thing is you have to practice that way, and that means in preseason, like, we got to wear on each other. We got to force it. We got to make sure that we're pounding the ball in practice and sustaining throughout the entire practice and just holding guys accountable. And we're going to script the right opportunities to do that in practice. And we've done that early in the season in some of the games we played. You think about the Notre Dame game a couple years ago. I thought we did exactly that. We won the game in the fourth quarter in those two games the last 2 years. So I think coming out of preseason camp, we were prepared to do that. Did we do that throughout the entire season at the end of the season the last couple years? No. And so we got to do that this year. We got to make sure that we're sustaining that throughout the season and then playing our best football and wearing teams down in the fourth quarter and at the end of the year.
Coach, thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. Yeah.